Season 2 with Matt and Al. Education, policy, innovation, and ideas.
I love that introduction. That's really
Ta-da.
good. It brings a smile to your face, doesn't it? I'm not sure it's going to damage any Spotify charts or anything like that, but it brings a smile to your face. So morning, Baasit. We've got you on with us this morning. So thank you very much for joining us. I'm trying to think how to introduce you because you're an educator and you've got a unique set of skills and knowledge, but you've got a bit of another background behind you, in terms of your celebrity status. And I'm just curious to start us off, having seen your latest thing, Let's Thrive, how are you planning to leverage your platform, as it were, to address perception of education and some of the issues within education?
Ooh, that's a very good question to get us started. First of all, a massive thank you for inviting me to be a part of Join the Dots. I'm a massive fan, guys. And Al, I love the new music. I think it's fantastic. And in terms of just a little bit of background, I've been on TV for 12 years now. But for close to 20 years, I've worked in the education space. And 8-9 years ago, I set up my own business, Siddiqui Education. The latest venture that I'm working on, I've had the absolute privileged position of working across the board. And when I say that, I mean primary schools, secondary schools, colleges, universities, a lot of work with businesses, education businesses, EdTech businesses, but also the wider scope as well. So in terms of the work that I do, first and foremost, I'm an educator at heart. I absolutely love the industry, the education ecosystem. There's so many passionate, collaborative people. But I think we're all, especially us three in this room, know that there are so many challenges to the way that the education system works right now. Is it fit for purpose? It's clearly not. And it's incumbent upon all of us to do what we can do to have that solution-focused attitude. And where I fit in and where I like to think that I fit in is having that kind of breadth of experience across the education journey, looking at our children from primary stage to the time they decide what they're going to do next, and then what employers are saying. I'm hoping to bridge the gap to give them purpose behind what they're doing in education and how will fit into whatever the young people do next. And to say it in a more succinct way, what I really aim to focus on is to support teachers in helping young people develop the tools they'll need to succeed in the future, but making sure the young people feel empowered to do whatever they want to do and having a clear understanding of what is next, really, more than anything.
Okay. So your background, like when you were teaching, is business and IT, and just you've referenced it there with the business thing. When you talk about your 7 C's, character and mindset, I'm a huge fan of above most of the national curriculum. So in terms of where we are now in the current societal issues and educational issues and things you just referenced there, where would you rank character and mindset as opposed to traditional academic skills and qualification?
I would say that, I would say 100% character and mindset have become more and more necessary. And I think as we move into the AI age, we need to have that more human-centered approach to what our young people feel, believe, and are able to action as well. It's very easy to jump onto a platform, gain some information, but if you haven't got that critical thinking skill and that curiosity to kind of question what's the purpose behind this, why am I being shown this? And B, why is the person saying this? What's their motivation behind it? And that could be for absolutely anyone, even us three right now. We'll have a purpose behind the things that we're doing. But it's important that all of us go in with this kind of attitude of curiosity and criticality. And that's one of the 7 C's. So there's creativity, curiosity, collaboration, community. I won't reel them all off. I can do if I'm okay to, because I always do tend to forget. I'll do them in the order that I remember, because obviously I don't know how much your audience know about the work that I'm doing through Let's Thrive. But essentially, with a focus on digital literacy skills and entrepreneurial skills, but the real golden thread that runs through all the workshops and talks and celebrations that I do is this sense of character education. So curiosity, creativity, collaboration. The fourth one is a big one for me, compromise. learning to have those diplomatic conversations, learning to have a bit of candor when you talk to different people as well. So compromise is a big, big one for me. And then the communication, community, and courage. And with you both being really prevalent in the world of education, you'll both be really aware that courage for everyone and all of those different skill sets are different for every young person that we talk to and that we interact with. In fact, they're different for every single adult as well. When I challenge in my talks, compromise, an example of a time that you've compromised on something, that's one that always really fascinates and intrigues me. And I think as I've gone through this Let's Thrive journey and developed these 7 C's, I've had to reflect inwards in terms of where I am with them. How can I teach young people about them if I can't give solid examples of how
I
I've
think
demonstrated
compromise is
them
a
as well?
fascinating one to me, because I'm struggling with virtual reality and seeing a real justification of the value for money at the moment. But I do remember something called Body Swaps XRL, and I was dead keen on it for the kids. I didn't use it in the end because it's aimed at an older children, because one of the modules they could do was conflict resolution. But it actually taught them how to react, how to look, how to, body touch, all sorts of things. I thought for the playground, never mind beyond that, I thought that'd be invaluable for the kids to have it. So conflict resolution and then compromise, yeah, brilliant.
But for me, where I really sort of reflect on why I've included compromise in it, and this was a good few years ago, I was delivering one of my workshops, kind of the baby of all the workshops that I do, my Let's Pitch It workshop, where I'd work with young people and they'd research, plan, and present a concept for a television show. It's kind of that learning through stealth. It's everything that we've discussed. It's developing all of those character traits, but they're developing their oracy when they present their idea, they're planning when they come up with their script. So I was comfortable doing that in a secondary school environment because that's where I taught. And I started to get asked to do it in a primary school setting. And I think it was year 5s, possibly. There was definitely some year 6s as well. And I started to set them off and say that, look, I won't have any issues with you coming up with creative ideas. I know inside your head you've got some brilliant ideas. My job is that you're making sure you're keeping everyone included. So that focus on collaboration. Into the program, I noticed a handful of kids started crying. And I was like, God, I've not been overly mean. What's going on there? What have I done? And so I asked the teacher and I go, are they okay? And basically, when we had a conversation with the kids, it was so-and-so's not listening to my idea or not valuing my idea. And it was a light bulb moment for me where it's exactly what you said. It's that conflict resolution, being able to have these conversations and a back and forth and come to that meeting in the middle, that middle ground. And then when I reflected on it more, it does show itself with the older children that I work with, but it's a little bit more like quiet quitting. So-and-so's not listening to my idea. Forget it. I'm going to stop getting involved now. So it brings it back to that. And I think, and I'm quite open to it now when I'm in all of the different meetings that I'm in now, when I get invited to all these different talks or trustee meetings and things like that. I'm always just approaching things like that and just looking at the body language, recognizing it in myself. Have I taken umbrage with what's been said? And do I just need to go in just with a little bit more of an open mind? So yeah, compromise fascinates me. I think that is something that we could all work on a little bit.
It's a lot better.
Let me, if I may, dive into some extra C's, because I think sometimes when we talk about where we sit right now, cobwebs and codswallops spring to mind for me on my critical path of C's. But the one that, that's very much where we are with our curriculum C. But I also think the one that's most prevalent to me and rings into many of the conversations we had in season 1 was around curiosity, Baasit. Because for me, the word curiosity and the word learner and lifelong learner, they're all fundamentally foundations of keeping our children constantly curious. We could get a lot of alliterations going on today, but but lots of what you talk about, lots of the things that are built around your Let's Thrive program are about developing soft skills, developing the broader child, to differentiate them from a topic that we all have our perspectives on and share about in an ever digital AI world. Actually, lots of what we're trying to do in education is about nurturing the whole, not just the academic side. So I'm kind of interested from your perspectives, how does focusing on the Let's Thrive program also allow a little bit more, for want of a better term, I suppose, accessibility and advantage in the system where we're not focused purely on the most academically able?
So Definitely. So when it comes to the Let's Thrive side, a lot of the workshops that I do, I've got this little bit that's called the projects to thrive, whereas essentially there's two elements to it. There's the passports to thrive, where teachers can look at how the 7Cs or the young people are embedding the 7Cs, whether it's at school, whether it's at home, whether it's through this checklist that I've created, or whether it's 7Cs through your own way. For example, courage for a young person could be standing in front of their peers and presenting. Courage for another young person could be coming into school for that full week, knowing how anxious they feel. And it's about recognizing and celebrating that individual more than anything. So there's no one size fits all with regards to it. And it's been designed with that empathy and inclusivity at that human level, fundamentally. But having worked in so many different schools, teachers would love to go off piste and do X, Y, and Z. But I've had to find this balance to make sure that where I'm offering value can be done in this project-based environment, but it then helps young people recognize the skills and strategies that they're developing through school are so important. And the two I'll always go back to fundamentally is literacy and maths as well. Maths and English, they are the bedrock in terms of everything that we do. I think there's so much flexibility that can happen with additional subjects around there. But if you haven't got a solid grasp of literacy, us three would not be having this conversation right now if I hadn't got the comfort and confidence to communicate with you both. There's a lot of alliteration there. And when it comes to maths as well, it's that critical mindset, it's that problem solving skills as well. You'll always hear that argument about, oh, I don't know how I'm going to use this formula in the real world. But we've got to look a little bit past that as well and think about, okay, how are we developing as young people? There'll be calculators, of course there will, there'll be AI. But if we're not able to actually use those tools, then there's a real nervousness on my part.
So isn't that the argument where we say, and there's good evidence to say from that numeracy and literacy, maybe our weighting and our dependency on those core foundational skills takes up too much of the school day, but at the same time, doesn't the approaches you talk about, project-based learning, problem-based learning, doesn't that give us an opportunity not to disregard those foundational skills, but to use them in a way where there's relevance and where young people are more likely to be engaged in that type of learning?
100%. And it's that why, isn't it, behind it? Kids are fantastic and they will work for you brilliantly if they can see the purpose behind it. And I think our biggest challenge and our biggest fear is that we're living in an age where us as educators, there's a lot of competition out there now. And what I mean by that is we're living in this age of attention economy. And if they're hearing X, Y, and Z on social media, or it's been parroted by an adult in their life who's saying this about social media, who may have a negative experience about their own education experience, we've got an uphill battle because we're confined to this system. And you can sense the dissonance in teachers as well. They know this. They know the things that they're teaching. How relevant are they going to be for our young people? So again, it is finding strategies and projects like Let's Thrive where we find this balance of that learning through stealth approach. This is the why. This is why are developing X, Y, and Z. This is why you have to work with your teachers to do these things. And I wish it was in my power to be able to shift the education system to make it as relevant and specific to what our needs of our young people are. You'll hear a lot of people talking about that. It was designed for the Industrial Revolution. There's definite merit in that. But to change something that's been in place for so many years requires so many passionate people. And I think we're getting there. I mean, Al, the work that you're doing, Matt, your voice is really, really powerful in terms of that. And there's so many who are making the right kind of messages. And the hope is that there will be this shift. But to sit and wait for some form of document to say that, right, this is it, we're revamping the curriculum, it's just not going to happen. And all us three, we're all kind of solution focused. What can we do in the meantime? And you'll see other people and champions out there that are doing that as well.
Just looking at some stats that somebody sent me yesterday, 68% of teachers report professional value conflicts because they're working with this system of constraints and accountability that doesn't work anymore. 45% act against professional judgment. And as a result of that, 40% leave teaching within 5 years. And yet, only we plough with the same thing. When you talk about all these different, different children and things, and I love it. That's it. There's various divides, I feel. I mean, and Al agrees with me. We talk about the digital divide is increasing, and now you've got this AI divide, and you've got all these ability divide, all sorts of things. If schools wanted a way to sort of address that, Let's Thrive is something that works for everybody then.
Yeah, that's the hope. The way that I've designed it is that, and just to give you a bit of perspective as well, when I was in full-time teaching, I felt my most comfortable in an IT room. The idea of being in a classroom or a hall setting was a little bit terrifying for me. However, when the pandemic happened, I realized that I need to develop this and adapt what I'm doing so it's scalable. And that's been a big focus around the foundations of Let's Thrive. It will celebrate the digital side, but in a very flexible way. But going back to kind of the systems that I'm using, I'm trying to make it as inclusive as possible. Simple example of this would be, and Matt, I'll be very transparent with this. You've been a great help in terms of this. I've had some back and forth with lots of different teachers, but I've used vibe coding. Al, I know you've been messing around with vibe coding. I'll talk to you forever about that. But through the 7 Cs, I've created this little heat map where a child could visit it once every couple of weeks, month, part of a form time activity where they could rate themselves on how much they've progressed. And if you imagine level 1, one-to-one communication, I've done this. And then it expands through group conversations, presenting, and they tick it slowly, and it creates this cobweb where they can kind of take a print screen and measure how they've done. But underneath that is a reflection piece where they can really look at what did they find challenging, what did they enjoy, what were they happy with in terms of themselves. Where I want to bring it back to the fact that it's digital though, or not digital, is that I'm very conscious, being kind of a smaller business, I'm very much bootstrapping the Let's Thrive platform, listening to teachers, building it slowly but surely so it's of the best value. Case in point, the way that works, the cobweb, kids would take a print screen off it, paste it onto a little Word document, or they could take a photo of it. You can upload it as a PNG, cut it, paste it, put it into a little booklet. So it is with that design that teachers, schools, education systems, digital infrastructures vary so much school by school. It's not for me, and it's going to be for bigger people who can fix that infrastructure, and it needs to be fixed because that divide is growing. But what can we do in the meantime to make sure that we're combining digital with the pedagogy, with the effective teacher skills and resources so everyone can access it?
Baasit, you touched on the fact that lots of what you're doing at the moment, creating those resources, comes into the creative space. And you mentioned vibe coding, which everyone may have a slightly different interpretation of the idea of using a tool to do some of that coding for you at pace. I'm interested where technology feeds into the curriculum and for our learners, and more importantly for future skills. And this is me going slightly off piste, but why not? Where do you see the transfer in terms of the skills required for vibe coding? Because for me, when we talk about a topic and everyone goes, well, that's just a box with people of a certain interest, that idea of iteratively creating something makes no difference whether you're trying to create a story about a fictional character, a guide to sustainability from an environmental perspective, a work of art, or a new application to go on your phone. Fundamentally, they're all requiring you to understand that problem, the way that we iterate, I guess the power of oracy in both the written and, depending on how you're coding, the spoken sense.
Yeah.
And at the same time highlighting the fact that actually technology doesn't replace the requirement for the idea, for the human being to actually influence the direction of travel. So I kind of wonder, do you see there's a space for what you're doing to create resources, to flip that and use it as something to actually teach within the classroom as well?
Absolutely. And I've created a similar version of what you've just articulated so well there, Al. When you choose one of my Let's Thrive workshops, so we've got Let's Pitch It, where young people can pitch ideas for TV shows. Let's Podcast, creating podcasts. Let's Help is a personal favorite of mine. I started that with a college that I worked with, where they had a charity kitchen that they used to support the kitchen ecosystem and the college ecosystem.
Was that Derby?
No, it wasn't Derby. It was Trafford College Group. Lovely, lovely bunch there. And I worked with their enterprise team to create it was almost like a dragon's den where the young people would use all of their entrepreneurial skills to come up with a concept to raise money for their own charity. So Let's Help is essentially an extension of that. You've got to sort of get into your team, decide on what problem you want to solve. And then exactly as you said, Al, what we build on, whichever Let's Thrive program you choose, there's the Project Builder Toolkit. And my version of the Project Builder Toolkit, and it's not set in stone, there's so many variations, but it'd be brilliant. Any teachers listening to this, educators, you do this already. When you come up with a concept or a resource that you're creating, you're going through that iterative process. You're figuring out your why, your blue sky thinking, how crazy can I make this to begin with? You get a bit of feedback from your teachers, you reflect on it, then you actually build it, then you test it, and then you gain feedback and you follow this cyclical loop. Where I've added additional bits to it, though, is that once you've created it, you've got to be able to articulate it and celebrate it. And I think for us, my greatest privilege is to be able to go into schools and celebrate the work that educators do. There's one catchphrase that I use in there. It's the worst catchphrase because I've used AI to create it, where the audience have to guess what the image is. And essentially is stop and smell the roses. We do brilliant things. Educators do fantastic things. And I can speak from experience of having taught, but also having worked in the education profession, where I've got to rock up to a school for 5 days and logistically figure out how I'm going to deliver workshops in 5 different schools with 5 different digital structures. A 10-minute conversation with a deputy head, bish, bash, bosh, we're done. We know what we're doing. That doesn't happen in industry. The backs and forths that you'd have to have on it. And I think there's so many skills that educators have that if they just stopped and smelt the roses, they'd feel empowered because they not only do something fantastic, they've got the right mindset and spirit to do it, but just the out the box thinking, that resilience, that agility is so, so special. So yeah, we do it already. It's just, have we been deliberate in reflecting on how we do it? But those iterative processes can be applied into so many different things, whether it's kind of a written piece, artwork, vibe coding. We do it. It's just, we don't necessarily put labels on it.
You just mentioned industry, Baasit, and one of our questions was about how would you like to see schools and industry collaborate a lot more to ensure the curriculum is genuinely preparing young people for jobs of the future, because if it isn't, then we're letting down the learners, we're letting down small businesses, we're letting down the economy. And I see regular things from, I think was it Pearson Allen January released that report that it's 1.3 billion to bring all schools up to standard in terms of a digital infrastructure. But the payback was like 8 times that. And you think, well, to me, it's a no-brainer, even if it requires industry support. So how would you like to see industry and businesses working more?
Can I just add on that, Matt, before we put Bass on the spot? Can I just add, for those of you who read media, you'll also see there's quite a narrative at the moment about bad beast of EdTech industry taking advantage of education and a lack of evidence of the impact of educational technology. And I think that wraps into the same thing, because I fear half of that is a very convenient narrative from a national system that doesn't want to spend money and doesn't have money to pay for technology to say you don't really need it. And on the other half, we can all see Google and Microsoft and Amazon stretching their influence in terms of, we have the AI tools, we'll provide the free training, but by association, you end up using our products throughout your life, not just your educational journey. So that's a really tough time, which is what I think is a really good question, Matt. It's a tough time right now to kind of see where the fit is for that industry feeding in, not only in terms of what skills we think learners need, but also how much we walk through the door into the classroom and the school itself.
Definitely. I think structurally and kind of the ed tech side of things, I've worked with so many different businesses that have solutions. And I think where Google and Microsoft are kind of dominating that space, you have to be really mindful of where you add value before anyone's creating any new education system or anything like that. You've got to be mindful of that. And I think the pace at which things are changing. But what I will say, and I've had conversations and experiences of working with the Shine Trust as well. And there are so many passionate educators, and they fund educators who have got solutions. Now, them versus a Google or a Microsoft, they're living and breathing what's happening in the education space. And a lot of these EdTech providers are in that space as well. They listen to their teachers. The rapport and relationships that they have with educators is fantastic to see. And I've seen this in countless times where I've been invited to a showcase of how that tech or how that solution has made an impact. And you can see the employees around the room who have worked on these projects, when they see the impact that it's had on those young people, the tears in their eyes and that pride, because they know the work that they're doing is of massive, massive value. I think going back to your original question, though, Matt, in terms of this collaborative approach between schools and businesses, that's something that I'm very excited to explore in kind of my little world through Let's Thrive. And I just want to give you a very quick example of that. I've been having conversations with a number of trusts. One that I'm having a wider conversation with is the Nova Trust at the moment. And I've said, I almost want to have this challenge where we can look at approaching local businesses to fund or part fund my Let's Thrive workshop. And I almost want to make a little bit of a game from it. I know that sounds flippant, but at the same time, part of this is the journey. If I can create something in a system that adds value, not only for the young people and their character, but also support schools financially, I'd love to test it and see how that works. Now, what I've basically written is a proposal, and we're going to go in together and approach local businesses and say, okay, this is why we feel that the Let's Thrive program adds value, but we can't do it alone. Can you support us either financially or in some form or fashion, i.e. sponsorship program? But I want to take it a stage further as well. Working in the education space, Matt and Al, I don't want to say we take for granted, because we don't. But when you work in education, you make such an impact day in, day out with the young people you work with. When you work with people who don't do that on a day-to-day basis, the feeling of pride they have when they've gone in and worked with some young people and felt they've made a difference, there's a huge element of pride in that. The reason why I got into education was 2 kids came in for work experience. I was working as a data analyst. 2 kids came in for work experience, and they were the best 2 weeks of my time at that job. Soon after, I did my teacher training, and I'd worked in industry, went into education. And I think there's so many people out there that want to give something back. So bringing it all the way back, and I've been waffling on for a while, but just so I've articulated this vision in terms of it, go in, joint effort with a trust or a school and say that this is the offering. Can you fund X, Y, and Z? However, I offer a little bit of CPD with this as well. Strategies just to build a rapport with young people if you've never done it before. Bring some of your team down. Oh, by the way, we're going to organize this project-based day where all the teachers are going to help these young people showcase these projects, these podcasts, these TV shows. Can you bring a handful of your staff to join that day? But they won't be going in kind of expected to teach, but we'll give them the tools, tips, and tricks to have those conversations with young people. Where I see the value in that is we're developing authentic relationships between local businesses who these young people may never even know existed, keeping talent local, which is an issue. We're helping teachers, give them that time and space, because you just have that extra body who's in there. And one of the happiest accidents that I've had in delivering my projects, there's one that I have called Books on the Box, where I work with young people. They create their own AI books, and then they create a movie trailer around that book. And myself and another member of the Pickertail team who I work with facilitate that day. And the teachers are just there just to offer almost teaching assistant support. Without fail, every time I've done this workshop, a teacher will come up to me and say, oh, I didn't know so-and-so was into that. Oh, I didn't know that they liked that or had that hobby or interest. So just to give teachers that space to find out a little bit more about their kids and in a lovely, authentic way. And I love the fact of that. And I think AI is going to be brilliant for that. I know people are scared with regards to AI, and everyone's got their own opinions about it. It's moving at a crazy pace. It's here to stay. But I think one of the hidden benefits with regards to that is if it gives teachers that time and space to do what they do best and build that authentic rapport with their kids, that's never, ever a bad thing.
Just while
Right. Listen, there's some interesting stuff there for folks to chew the fat on, and I think we've got a really good sense of what you're about and what you're trying to do with schools at the moment. That's it. But before we wrap up, I think we need to zoom out a bit, which is kind of what do you see as being the big challenges right now in the education system? What are the big things that you think we need to be focusing on? Not necessarily specifically stuff that you can immediately pull the lever on, but what are you seeing as a sort of the repeat red flags or the repeat warning bells that you're seeing?
I would say it's all the things that we've discussed already. The amount of competition that our young people have in what's the point of school is a big fear of mine, and it's amplified by social media, and potentially different family members consuming that media as well. I think we're always in an uphill battle, but when you combine that with the potential dissonance that our teachers have, where the stats that you were reeling off there, Matt, that teachers themselves don't see that is fit for purpose. Why am I doing this? It's a challenge that makes me nervous. That are we all clear on what the purpose of education is and what the purpose of teachers are? And can we really reflect on what is the value that we are adding? Now, I know the value. I know how important education is. I know that it's shifting, but good teachers are worth their weight in gold. But is it celebrated enough? Is it amplified enough? And do the kids get it? Or is it easier for them to see a social media person convincing them that education isn't needed? So I think for me personally, that is my fear. And then it's always the speed at which these solutions are made at a holistic level. It's baffling when you see kind of the reports that are coming out. I'm quite nervous about what the curriculum is going to look like as well. I'm hoping there's going to be some substantial changes to that. Yeah.
This is normally the point, Matt, where you talk about being king for the day or a magic wand or something else.
I was just looking at something else because Baasit sort of tweaked my simple mind that back in 2018 we looked at character education with the Jubilee Centre in Birmingham University, I think it was, and we tried to bring some of that into the curriculum, and some of it stayed, to be fair. And I just thinking, at the time that was invaluable, and then COVID happened, and you just think if everybody had done character education in the schools and focused on what you're doing, and I love it, I just love it, just things like the courage and the compromise are the ones that jump out at me. If everyone had done that before COVID, not knowing COVID was coming, and that would become a focus of education. Just imagine the situation we'd be in now, post-COVID, because we are still post-COVID, we're still dealing with it. It would be so much better prepared for it, wouldn't we? So when you say things like you're not the person to make the big changes, I think you should be. We'll make you education minister.
And one other
I think,
challenge.
Passive for education secretary.
Well, listen, you get my vote. I'm going to throw a little challenge at you here because I love what Matt said about courage. And let's be honest, we want to build that courage. But if you focus on courage in young people, does it imply the development onus is on them more than the system to be more inclusive?
I love that. I would say, and I've kind of been on this, I hate to say journey, because when I say journey, it was just I had a lot of time to reflect when I was in Cyprus, thinking about the value that I can add. And I'm always kind of thinking about that, the bigger picture to some degree. And whether or not this answers your question, and feel free to challenge me with it a little bit more, Al. I think that courage is something that we all have to kind of recognize and reflect on in ourselves. How can we articulate what courage is to our young people if we can't say it ourselves? And I've created a little mini app where you tell a story that you're proud of, and then AI will work its magic and break it down into those 70s. And that's not to take away from what people say is something they're proud of. We're a very modest and humble society. This country as a whole is. We're not good at just talking about what we do well. So I would say, in answer to your question, that courage, I'm sticking by it. It needs to be kind of built upon, acknowledged in our young people, and for them to articulate it to us, their definition of courage. But I will say exactly the same to the adults that I work with as well, the teachers, the teaching assistants, the employers as well. I'm privileged enough to go and do all of these random talks. And I think I get a bit of a look from people when they think I'm going to talk about blokes watching TV for a living. And then I start asking them some quite challenging questions in terms of this.
I think you've hit the key, Baasit. The key that you just sold me on completely, trying to be that kind of critical challenge for this conversation, was it's fine to talk about courage for young people and developing, as long as at the same time we apply the same standard and challenge of courage for the educators and the system around them, to recognize that it's not just about the child to develop. The system's got to be courageous enough to adapt to make sure that we're an inclusive place for everybody.
But Al, and bringing the question back to you,
Oh,
why?
now I've done it.
Yeah, no, but why is it that I can have that conversation with yourself? It's not to say that I can't have it with other people, but I've seen the work that you do, that lovely balance of humility, but so much knowledge as well. Where does that come from? Where do you feel that relaxed and comfortable to poke fun at yourself in the nicest possible way, but also offer so much value as well? Has that come from your time in industry, or just were you born with it?
Listen, I think there's a whole raft of things here. I think that curious is the bit we come full circle to. I've spent 30 years learning about the education system around the world from very different angles, from whether it's how they're structured politically, to how do we do digital technology, to how do we change the learning journey, to, the last 20 plus years, governance, growing, bidding for, building schools, scale and capacity, supporting schools with challenge. And so one thing I think is really, really important is, I use it as a bit of a jest, the 2 eyes, 2 ears and 1 mouth. And I think there's a very natural persuasion that I can reflect and model on myself and then share without being a threat to others, which is when I was young, I always in a room wanted to be the first to speak. And I wanted to impress everybody with what I knew and let them know that I was the person to listen to in a conversation. And as the years go on, I'm much happier to listen in the room and then share a review at the end. And I think that distinction is recognizing that I feel comfortable asking questions about and challenging folks, because I always have a starting point, which is I'm just proposing some other questions you might ask, not telling you how to do it or whether you're right or wrong. We all know it's context based. There's a little bit as we get older, we think, well, I've earned the right to share a review, and if people don't like it, that's okay. Because what could we say about education where we'd get a unanimous vote? We just can't, frankly. But I also think something else we talk about, particularly on that sense of, everyone builds their career on the shoulders of others. It's really important in the edu space that people feel it's a safe space to challenge the norm. You talk about the value of some of the things that Matt covers, and I really like the fact that I will spot a Matt post or a Matt challenge, and it might come from a rant. Well, he might call it a rant. It might be from a position of frustration, but what it always does is, rather than just be a rant, it's from a position of fact and evidence of how it influences what's happening in your school. But it just poses why this is wrong and why we think differently. And I kind of feel if there's lots of us hear other people saying this isn't quite right, we feel empowered to be slightly stronger in our voice. And ultimately, that's how system change happens. We know politicians aren't up for a big reform. They're not going to squeeze it in an electoral cycle. They haven't got the appetite for it. They haven't got the money for it. And they almost certainly won't get the buy-in from unions and others to do it. So we're left with actually, it has to be a grassroots within the limits of what we do. How can we model change practice? How can we prioritize skills as much as acquisition of those core, literacy, numeracy, oracy skills? How can we shift in more subtle ways the dial to make it more helpful, whilst in parallel recognizing that probably external forces more powerful than all of us, the Amazons of this world, as Matt and I have discussed on previous episodes, will come out with their series of micro credentials. Parents will vote with their feet. Their kids will start doing those qualifications. They'll suddenly find that they're the ones that employers are recruiting. And then the education system will be forced to turn like an oil tanker. And of course, we'll say it was our intention all along. But the truth is, it will take something more significant to really pull us in a new direction. I think that's kind of where I come from. But, we all know, for everything we know, AI is a perfect example. The number of times that I've been at events and either had other people introduced as, or personally been introduced as an AI expert. And I kind of feel like I need to put a sign up quick going, no, absolutely not. I don't consider myself an expert on anything. I do consider myself fairly well read and knowledgeable in lots of things. But in the case of AI, as soon as you think you're an expert
can
on
keep up?
anything, you've lost the plot. You've lost the plot. The point is, I am a curious person, and I have done lots of playing and trying and using large language models, AI, and I have been magpieing around the world, places where it's been working well and places where it's been working rubbish. And we all do that. That's exactly what you do. You know, that's what Matt does. Whenever you walk in a room, half of what you're doing is observing what's working well to lock away in the data banks and go share with somebody else.
100%.
And half is where you think you might be able to share an idea or a suggestion that might steer them in a more productive way. You know, and that's that kind of equity of being out there. The more we get invited, the more you have in your role, the invitations to get involved with more and more school systems, the more you can share those best bits that you've magpied. I used to be refer to myself as an edu sponge, but I prefer edu magpie now because that's the essence of it, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? It really, really is. No, that's brilliant. So many insights there. Thank you for sharing that, Al. And just to add to that as well, I will completely echo that, the 2 ears, 1 mouth thing. And I think, well, I'm always a bit reticent about sharing on social media. I was quite nervous about doing the podcast. You'll notice I don't do them quite often. 2 reasons why I've done it is because now I feel that Let's Thrive is a way that I can confidently articulate the value that I give. Is kind of, in essence, the journey that I've been on over the last couple of 8 years as well. And going back to what you said as well, Al, I'm never an expert in anything. Unless I can confidently counter argue my point, then I wouldn't make it in the first place. If I can't challenge myself with it, and I think it comes back to that criticality, that reflective nature as well, which all good educators have. But I will firmly agree with you. Approaching anything, approaching a challenging conversation from the realms of curiosity, it is so powerful, because all you're doing is just trying to figure out authentically what you can do in this space. So thank you.
Absolutely. And what Matt and I discovered from Series 1 is we've met folks from quite different overlapping areas within education and business and politics that links into that. But we, without saying anything other than a consistent sets of questions, started to see the very same strand, the golden thread appearing. And it's like, well, that's the bit that helps reinforce our perspectives of, well, we're onto something. It's not just us thinking this could be different. Everyone's kind of saying, this is my experience. It's not the same as yours, but this bit, there is common ground.
Yeah.
And that's where everything should be about co-production. And I think in Series 2, we've got a really, really good mix of folks. And I hope they will both further reinforce some views, but maybe stretch and challenge us on others. And I think that's where, frankly, it's worth getting up on a Saturday morning and having a conversation, because it's about learning as well as sharing, you know, and you've been a perfect example of that. You're somebody I've known and collaborated on over the years on lots of projects. And you're what I would refer to in a very technical term as a good egg in education. So keep being a good egg, matey.
I'll take that. Thank you very much, guys. It's been a sincere pleasure talking to you both. And I'm so glad that me and Matt are twinning with our hoodies as well.
I'm expecting logos next time round for the next episode.
And
I will do some
logo.
extra special country music for us, all right?
Thanks, Baasit.
Well, Baasit, you've been a star. Thank you so much for joining us. So from Matt and I, thank you. And hopefully we can have you back on in future episode.
Gladly. It's been a pleasure, guys. You have a wonderful day.
Take care, mate.